What are the issues that are motivating these voters? And of course, recognizing that Black voters are not a monolith, but what are you hearing from the folks on the ground? Is it just that they're excited about Vice President Harris, or are they telling you that they like her policy positions? Or conversely, are they excited about Donald Trump? What are the specifics you're hearing?
Yeah, I don't think that. I think one, while there is a certain level of excitement around the candidate, I think it goes beyond the candidate. Even Vice President Kamala Harris, or even if you were referring to Donald Trump, I think ultimately what people are seeing, people have a pathway to hope. I think there is an appetite. I think in the country, when I talk to people, that when I say folks don't, the people that I meet that don't engage, they're usually people who don't feel like they matter, or they're people that don't feel like them participating in this process is going to have a remarkable difference, and so they disengage. I don't call them apathetic; they just disengage because they're not able to make the connection or see a pathway to hope around the things they care about. What I am noticing as I'm talking to people, I'm talking to more people that believe that there's something that they can do in this moment, that there's a pathway to hope. One of the pieces that I think has engaged and energized women, all women across the board, has been the attack on reproductive freedom and reproductive rights, regardless of whether people, where they are on the question around abortion, do they believe it and they don't believe it. Everybody that I've spoken with believe that women should have the same kind of authority and agency over their body, that is a decision between a woman, her doctor, and her God, however she puts it, right? But that is her decision. That should not be a decision of government interfering in the lives of women or really trying to restrain what women's agency. And so that has activated, particularly young women. That is one of the single biggest issues I think that has activated young women around reproductive freedom, reproductive health and justice. The second thing is really around, I think what COVID did is I think COVID had people created a certain level of anxiety around economic sustainability and our economic futures. And so as we've been talking to Black voters in particular, they're really concerned about, are there going to be policies? They're looking at and witnessing and experiencing, seeing programs like affirmative action be discarded. Those very things that many of our parents, like my parents actually benefited from, even the ability to be able to go to college, even the ability to be able to start businesses and have some success at that. A lot of those things were actually shaped by policies that we're seeing being unraveled. I also think that there's a big piece around cost, even the way that we see the health of the economy, that Black voters, when they're talking about the health of the economy, it's not based on how well the GDP is doing. It's not based on what the unemployment rate. It's really around day-to-day kitchen table issues. It's really around bread. I say it's bread, eggs, and cheese, of milk. Ultimately, what the cost of things are, what my security in terms of my job security, my ability to make resources, and my ability to be able to get access to home ownership. And so what we're seeing, what we're hearing is one candidate is really not talking about there's another candidate that is actually speaking on those issues. And that in itself, I think, is also activating people. The third thing that when we're talking about Black voters as well is that racism is traumatic for our community, that literally seeing and having an alignment around, we're seeing book bans, we're seeing this idea of Black history can't be taught in school, right? That's not just an external issue. That's an issue that many people in my community, many Black voters actually see as an attack on on who we are, just who we are and our right to exist and to share our stories. And so that in itself has also created a level of anxiety around. That's a core issue that people, particularly Black voters, want to really be able to make sure that there's someone that's governing that can govern for all of us, that there's someone that's governing, that we're literally not going to be the scapegoat, we're not going to be the casualty of war, but that in fact that there would be some idea of parity and equity in this process, or thought around that. So that's what I see as well. And then criminal justice reform, that as we kind of continue to go forward in this election cycle over and over again, there were a generation of voters who were brought into this process after the George Floyd uprisings, right? And as a result, those voters, those young voters, they have a whole different way of the way they see the world. They don't have the same kind of sense of party loyalty to either party as their predecessors. They also, what I call them, the Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately generation? They're literally looking at policies to the extent of how will these policies materially impact my life. In some ways, I think they're more sophisticated voters in terms of what they're looking for as outcomes.